Daniel Marsh built a house for a woman he had never seen, and every man in Willow Creek thought he had lost his mind. The autumn wind moved over the Kansas grassland in long golden waves, bending the tall grass until it looked like the whole earth was breathing. Daniel stood on his 320 acres with a hammer in his hand, sawdust on his shirt, and a dream sitting heavy in his chest. The house was not finished yet. The roof was still open to the sky. The walls smelled of fresh-cut wood. But on the front porch, where no porch roof had been raised, two hand-built chairs already waited side by side. His neighbor, Ezra Briggs, had ridden over that morning to help lift the roof beams. Ezra was a wide man with a beard full of dust and a habit of saying what other men only thought. He stopped when he saw the two chairs facing the endless grass. "Daniel," Ezra said, staring at them, "you do not have a wife." Daniel wiped his hands on his trousers and looked at the chairs like they were the most natural thing in the world. "Not yet." Ezra gave a dry laugh. "You built the second chair before you found the woman." Daniel did not smile. His eyes stayed on the grass, where the land rolled on until it touched the pale blue sky. "I know what I am building toward," he said. "The rest will come." That was Daniel Marsh. He was not a loud man. He did not waste words, money, or promises. At 31, he had already learned that the West could break a careless man in one season. He had worked 2 hard years on that land, sleeping first in a dugout, then in a rough shed, saving every board, every nail, every penny. He had planted wheat, fenced pasture, dug a well, and laid stone for a proper hearth with his own hands. But he did not want a house that felt empty. He had seen that kind of life before. His father had built a farm in Missouri and filled it with tools, fields, animals, and silence. Daniel remembered evenings where the house stood warm but lonely, where no one laughed, no one read aloud, and no one sat beside his father when the sun went down. Daniel had promised himself that if he ever built a home, it would not be just walls and a roof. It would be full. By the end of October 1879, the house stood finished. 4 rooms, a stone fireplace, 2 south windows to catch winter light, a long front porch made for quiet evenings, and still the 2 chairs waited there facing the prairie like they were expecting someone. In November, Daniel rode into town and placed an advertisement in the Kansas City Journal. He wrote it slowly in careful words while the printman watched him with tired eyes. Daniel listed what he had: land, a good house, fair health, no drinking, no gambling, no debts. He wrote that he wanted a wife who could bear frontier life and believed in honest work. Then his pencil stopped. For a long moment, he stared at the paper. The practical words were true, but they did not say what mattered. They did not say why he had built the porch first in his mind. They did not say why the second chair had felt more important than the chimney. At last, he added one final line. "The house has a porch with 2 chairs and a view of the grass that goes on until it meets the sky, and I would very much like someone to sit in the second chair." When the advertisement appeared, Daniel expected a few answers. He received 43. Some letters were sweet, some were careful, some spoke more of land than love. Some asked about money before asking about him. Daniel read every one, but none held his attention for long until he opened a letter from a woman named Catherine Howell. She lived in Philadelphia. She was 26. Her father owned a printing shop, and she worked there as a compositor, setting type with ink-stained fingers and sharp eyes. She did not pretend to be soft in the way many women were taught to pretend. She wrote plainly. She said she could keep accounts, organize work, read late into the night, and speak the truth even when silence would be easier. She did not describe her face. Daniel noticed that first. Most women had written about fair hair, small hands, blue eyes, or good manners. Catherine wrote about her mind. She wrote about wanting to go west because the city made every person wear a shape chosen by someone else. She wanted a place where a person could stand in open air and be exactly what they were. Daniel read that line twice. Then he read the whole letter again. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the house. The second chair sat empty beyond the window, catching cold sunlight. Daniel held Catherine's letter in both hands and felt something quiet wake inside him, not wild, not foolish, but steady. He wrote back that same day. He told her about the wheat he was trying to grow, a strong red wheat brought by settlers from far away. He told her about the well, the cattle dog named Copernicus, and the way Kansas sunsets made a man feel small and grateful at once. Then he told her the truth about the chairs. "I built them before the house was done," he wrote. "It may seem strange, but to me the chair was the point. The house is only what holds the life around it." In Philadelphia, Catherine Howell read his letter after the printing press had gone quiet for the night. The shop smelled of ink, oil, and paper. Her father had already gone home. The gaslight shook softly above her desk as she sat alone with Daniel's words. The chair was the point. She touched that line with one finger. For months she had read advertisements from men who wanted servants, cooks, pretty faces, or farm hands dressed as wives. Daniel Marsh was the first man who seemed to want a person. Not a shadow, not a helper, not a prize. A person. She folded his letter carefully and held it against her chest, though she would have scolded herself if anyone had seen. Their letters continued through winter, then spring. They wrote about work, books, weather, dogs, fear, honesty, and what it meant to build a life on purpose. Daniel's letters were simple, but each one felt solid, like a board fitted cleanly into place. Catherine's letters were bright and direct, full of thought, full of questions, full of a hidden warmth she did not give away easily. By the 5th month, Daniel knew he was waiting for her, though he had never touched her hand. Then Catherine's father suffered a stroke. The letter she sent was short, but Daniel could feel the pain behind every line. Her father could not run the shop alone. She was the only one who knew the press well enough. She could not leave Philadelphia. She did not know when she would be free. Daniel sat at his kitchen table for a long time after reading it. Outside, the empty chair faced the prairie. The evening light fell across it like a promise being tested. The next morning he wrote back. "I understand," he wrote. "I will wait. The second chair is not going anywhere. I built it strong." Catherine read Daniel's answer 3 times, and each time the same line stopped her heart for a breath. "The second chair is not going anywhere. I built it strong." For the first time in many years she wanted to cry, but Catherine Howell was not a woman who gave tears away easily. She sat alone in the print shop with ink on her fingers and the cold Philadelphia night against the windows. The press stood silent beside her. Her father slept in the room above, weak but alive. The whole shop seemed to wait with her. She could not go to Kansas. Not yet. That truth hurt more than she expected. She had spent most of her life making practical choices. Practical choices did not hurt like this. They were supposed to be clean and useful, like setting type in a straight line. But Daniel had become part of her thoughts, part of her mornings, part of the quiet place inside her where she kept things she did not show the world. She folded his letter and placed it in the drawer beside her work table. Then she went back to work. For 8 more months, Catherine ran the print shop. She ordered paper, set type, corrected mistakes, cleaned the press, paid bills, and kept her father's business alive. Her father's hands slowly grew stronger, but not strong enough for the heavy work. Some days he sat in a chair near the window, watching her move across the shop with tired pride. "You were always meant for more than this room," he told her one evening. Catherine did not look up from the page she was setting. "This room fed us," she said. "Yes," her father answered softly, "but it was never meant to keep you." That night she lay awake with Daniel's last letter under her pillow like a foolish girl, though she would have denied it if anyone asked. She thought of the Kansas grass. She thought of 2 chairs on a porch. She thought of a man who had built a place for a life before he even knew whose footsteps would cross the floor. In the spring, she hired a young man named Franklin to help in the shop. He was nervous, thin, and eager. He made terrible mistakes at first, placing letters backward, smearing ink, dropping type on the floor. Catherine corrected him with sharp patience. She taught him the cases, the press, the accounts, and the quiet discipline of checking a line before trusting it. All summer she trained him. No one knew what she was really doing. She was building her own road west, one careful lesson at a time. By early autumn, Franklin could run the shop for half a day without help. By October, he could run it for a full day. Her father had recovered enough to guide him from a chair. The first time Franklin printed a full order without a single mistake, Catherine stood over the finished pages and felt her breath catch. It was time. That night she wrote to Daniel. Her hand was steady at first. Then near the end it trembled. "I am ready," she wrote. "If the chair is still there, I would like to come and see it." When Daniel received that letter, he was standing by the fence with Copernicus, his cattle dog, at his side. The sky was wide and pale. The wind moved through the wheat stubble. He opened the envelope with the care of a man handling something that could change his life. He read her words once. Then he sat down on the fence rail because his knees had gone weak. Copernicus looked up at him, confused. "She is coming," Daniel said. The dog wagged his tail once, as if the matter had been settled long ago. Daniel had waited almost 2 years since placing the advertisement. The house was finished now, but he began seeing every small thing that needed doing. He repaired the porch step, though it was not broken. He scrubbed the kitchen floor twice. He polished the stove. He washed the windows until the south light came through clear and warm. He cut extra firewood and stacked it by the back wall in neat rows. Ezra Briggs rode over and found Daniel beating dust from a rug in the yard like he was fighting an enemy. Ezra leaned on his saddle horn. "She coming soon." "Next week," Daniel said. Ezra looked toward the porch. The 2 chairs sat where they had always sat. "You nervous?" Daniel struck the rug once more, then stopped. "Yes." Ezra smiled. "Good, means you got sense left." On the morning Catherine's train arrived, Daniel wore his clean shirt, dark coat, and best hat. He reached the station too early and stood beside his wagon while people stared. The little Kansas station smelled of coal smoke, cold iron, and dust. Every whistle in the distance made his heart rise. When the train finally came, it screamed into town with black smoke rolling behind it. Doors opened. Men stepped down. A mother with 2 children, a traveling salesman, a soldier with a limp. Then Catherine Howell appeared. Daniel knew her before anyone said her name. She was not dressed like the women in the letters he had received from others. Her brown traveling dress was plain but well kept. Her gloves were dark from use. A small trunk sat beside her feet. She was not tiny, not fragile, not trying to look helpless. She stood straight in the cold wind, her brown hair pinned under her hat, her eyes sharp and full of fear she was trying to hide. Daniel stepped forward. "Miss Howell." She looked at him, and something in her face changed. It was not a smile, not yet. It was recognition, quiet and deep. "Mr. Marsh," she said. For a moment neither of them moved. After nearly 2 years of letters, the real world felt strange between them. There were no pages now, no ink, no safe distance. Only a man and a woman standing on a wooden platform while the train breathed smoke behind them. Then Catherine looked past him at the wagon. "I understand," she said. "There is a chair." Daniel's mouth softened. "There is." The ride to the ranch was quiet at first. Catherine watched the land with wide eyes. Kansas was nothing like Philadelphia. There were no tight streets, no tall buildings, no press wheels turning behind walls. There was only grass, sky, wind, and space enough for a person to hear her own heart. Daniel did not fill the silence. That comforted her. Many men talked when they were afraid. Daniel let the road speak. At last she asked, "Did you ever regret waiting?" He kept his eyes on the team. "No." "That is a very quick answer." "It is an honest one." She looked down at her gloved hands. "You waited for a woman you had never seen." "I waited for the woman who wrote those letters." Her throat tightened, but she turned her face toward the window of open air so he would not see. When the house came into view, Catherine sat straighter. It stood on a rise above the grass, simple and strong, with smoke resting gently above the chimney. The south windows caught the afternoon light. The porch stretched across the front. And there they were, 2 chairs. The wagon stopped. Daniel climbed down and helped her to the ground. His hand was warm and rough around hers. For 1 second neither let go. Catherine stepped onto the porch like she was crossing into a life that had been waiting with its door open. She moved to the second chair and touched the back of it. The wood was smooth under her fingers. Then she sat. The grass rolled out before her until it met the sky. Wind moved across it in shining waves. The house stood behind her, warm and real. Daniel stood beside the porch steps, watching her as if the whole world had narrowed to that one moment. Catherine breathed in slowly. "Well," she said. Daniel looked at the empty land, then at her. "Well," he answered. Copernicus came from around the side of the house, ears high, eyes fixed on the stranger. He walked straight to Catherine, sniffed her skirt, studied her face, then placed his head on her knee. Daniel stared. Catherine lowered one hand onto the dog's head. "I take it this is important." Daniel's voice was quiet. "He does not do that." For the first time since arriving, Catherine smiled. That night she stood inside the house that Daniel had built before he sent for her. She saw the stone fireplace, the careful shelves, the clean table, the quilt folded at the foot of the bed in the spare room. Nothing was rich, but everything had been made with care. Every board seemed to say, "I expected you." Her eyes filled then. Daniel saw and looked away, giving her privacy even in emotion. Catherine wiped her cheek quickly. "You built all this before you knew." Daniel turned back to her. "I knew what I hoped." She looked around the room again, then toward the porch where the two chairs rested in the last blue light of evening. After a long silence, she whispered, "It feels like home." Daniel's face changed, and for a moment he looked younger, almost wounded by happiness. Outside, the wind moved over the Kansas grass. Inside, two people who had built their love with paper, ink, patience, and faith stood in the same room at last. But Catherine had not told him everything. In her trunk, hidden beneath her books, was one final letter from Philadelphia, a letter that could still pull her back if duty called her name again. The letter from Philadelphia lay in Catherine's trunk like a cold hand waiting to close around her heart. For 2 days she did not tell Daniel about it. She told herself she was only waiting for the right moment. She told herself there was no need to darken the peace too soon. But every time she passed the trunk, every time Daniel smiled at her from across the table, every time she heard the wind brush the porch chairs, the secret grew heavier. Daniel noticed. He noticed the way she looked toward her room when she thought he was not watching. He noticed the way she held her cup too tightly at breakfast. He noticed the way her voice softened whenever he spoke of winter plans, as if she was afraid to stand too close to a future that might be taken from her. But Daniel did not press her. He had waited for her once. He could wait for her words too. On the third evening, snow began to fall over the Kansas grass. It was light at first, drifting past the south windows like torn white cloth. The fire burned low in the stone hearth. Copernicus slept near the door, his nose tucked under his tail. Catherine sat at the table with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles had turned pale. Daniel set down the wood he had been carrying. "Catherine," he said gently, "what are you afraid to tell me?" She closed her eyes. The kindness in his voice nearly broke her. She stood, went to the trunk, and took out the letter. Her hands trembled as she gave it to him. "It came before I left," she said. "My father had another weak spell, not a stroke but enough to frighten him. Franklin is still learning. The shop may need me again." Daniel looked at the letter but did not open it right away. "Why did you not tell me?" "Because I had just arrived," she said, and her voice cracked. "Because you built this house. Because you waited. Because I sat in that chair and wanted it to be true so badly that I was ashamed of myself." Daniel's face stayed quiet, but pain moved through his eyes. Catherine turned away from him. "I have lived too long by duty to pretend it does not matter now. If my father needs me, I may have to go back." The room became still except for the fire. Daniel opened the letter and read it slowly. Catherine watched him, waiting for fear, anger, disappointment, anything that would make this easier to understand. But Daniel only folded the paper and placed it on the table between them. Then he said, "Then we will answer it." She looked at him. "We?" "Yes. You would let me go." Daniel stepped closer, but he did not touch her yet. "I did not build this house to hold you like a locked door," he said. "I built it so someone could choose to come in and call it home." Catherine's eyes filled at once. He continued, his voice low and steady. "If your father truly needs you, I will drive you to the station myself. I will send money if I can. I will wait again if I must." "You should not have to." "No," Daniel said, "but love is not only what a man gets to keep. Sometimes it is what he is willing to protect, even if it hurts him." Catherine pressed one hand to her mouth. All her life, people had needed her. Her father had needed her hands at the press. The shop had needed her mind. Philadelphia had needed her to stay in the place it had made for her. But Daniel was the first person who made her feel wanted without making her feel trapped. She crossed the room and put her forehead against his chest. For a moment Daniel stood still, shocked by the closeness. Then his arms came around her with careful strength. Catherine felt the warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart, the smell of wood smoke and cold air on his shirt. She had crossed half the country for this man, yet in that moment she understood she had not come for land or safety or a chair. She had come because his love gave her room to breathe. The next morning they wrote a letter together. Catherine told her father the truth. She told him she loved him. She told him she would return if he truly needed her. But she also told him she had found a home, and that home had a man in it who treated her life as something worthy, not something to be used. Daniel added his own lines at the bottom, simple and respectful. He offered to help bring the shop's accounts into better order by mail. He offered to pay for another assistant through winter if needed. He offered everything he could without asking Catherine to give up herself. Then they waited. Those weeks tested them more than either expected. The snow came harder. The wind pressed against the house at night like a living thing. Some mornings, the well rope froze stiff. Some evenings, the cattle needed bringing clothes, and Daniel came in with ice on his beard and red hands from the cold. Catherine learned the ranch one task at a time. She burned bread twice. She cut her finger trying to mend a feed sack. She cried once behind the barn when the loneliness of the open land rose up too large around her. Daniel found her there, said nothing, and simply stood beside her until she took his hand. Slowly, the house began to change around her. Her books filled one shelf, then two. Her ink box sat near the window. Her clean, careful records replaced Daniel's rough notes. In the evenings, she read aloud while he carved new pegs or mended harness. Sometimes he looked up just to watch her mouth shape the words. On December 3rd, under a pale winter sun, Daniel and Catherine were married in the front room of the house. Ezra Briggs came as witness, wearing a coat that smelled strongly of horses. The county judge said the words. Daniel placed a silver ring on Catherine's finger, a plain band with a small wheat stalk carved into it. Catherine looked at the ring, then at him. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "It is yours," he said. After the judge left, after Ezra rode home, after the house grew quiet again, Catherine stood on the porch in her wedding dress beneath her wool shawl. Daniel came out beside her. The two chairs waited in their old places, dusted with snow around the legs. The male rider came just before sunset. Daniel took the letter. Catherine knew her father's hand before he gave it to her. She opened it slowly. Her father's words were shaky but clear. Franklin was managing well. The shop was open. He missed her, but he would not call her back out of fear. Then came the line that made her knees weaken. "My dear girl, go live the life that finally sounds like your own." Catherine lowered the letter and began to cry. Daniel took one step toward her. This time she reached for him first. Spring came soft and green across the prairie. The wheat rose strong. Catherine planted a garden near the south wall. Neighbors began visiting, first out of curiosity, then because Catherine started lending books from the front room. By summer, people rode miles to borrow a volume, ask Daniel about wheat, or sit at the table where there was always coffee and plain talk. Years passed, and the house became what Daniel had dreamed before anyone else could see it. Full. It filled with books, children, work, laughter, hard winters, warm bread, tears, music, and long evenings on the porch. Daniel and Catherine had 3 children who grew up believing words mattered and promises were things you built with both hands. Every evening when the day's work was done, Daniel sat in one chair and Catherine sat in the other. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they said nothing at all. The grass still went on until it met the sky, and the wind still moved across it like time passing over the earth. Many years later, after Daniel's hair had turned white and his hands had grown stiff from work, Catherine found him on the porch at sunset, looking at the second chair instead of the land. "What are you thinking?" she asked. He smiled softly. "I was right about the chairs." Catherine sat beside him and took his hand. "Yes," she said, "you were." And when the sun lowered over the Kansas grass, the house Daniel built before he sent for a mail-order bride stood warm behind them, no longer waiting for a life to arrive. It had become one.